Do we have any new people here tonight who haven't been to CPS? Oh, welcome. Welcome. So for all of us, we know to turn our phones off, please. And there's an exit over here, here, and out there. If you do need to use the bathroom, it's also out that way. Just head in that direction, you'll find it. Now, are we going to have supper this evening? I went to the kitchen and it's all in a bit of a disarray, so I'm expecting not. Does anyone know the answer to that? It's still in disarray, yes. So we could have a picnic on the carpet, but no. Okay. All right. Come on in and welcome. We've got a great display of images tonight, and it's going to be a good evening. I just want a couple of things to run through before we get into the evening. The cups, and I'm really showing you this for the benefit of those people at home. If you have a cup like this, and an award, silver platter, that belongs to CPS that you received at the end of last year, please do bring it along. And bring it along shiny new like this. We'll be able to put somebody else's name on it at the end of this year and give it to them at final night. So the importance of bringing your cup back now, I mean, it's a long time before final night, really, but we have to collate them all and put the next recipient's name on it before they get it at the end of the year. So if you have one of these, please bring it along so that JK and the people working on this can get this done for you. So this was particularly neat. I was awarded this at the end of last year, and this is a national competition, most successful national exhibitor. It's a very, very esteemed award to pick up, and I found in looking at this, and you'll find this when you get cups at the end of this year, that you're in great company. because on here are the names of other people who have come before you. And the year before this, I can't read it. Yes, I can. Dawn Kirk, you picked it up the year before this, and then Helen McLeod. Well, she has her name on here a few times, and Alistair Phillips, I think, and then Kirkpatrick. She doesn't live in New Zealand anymore, but her name's on here. It's great to see everybody. I won't go back any further on there, but it is lovely having your name on there, and you know you're in good company. So if you have one of these, please bring it back. And I'll just put it in that box over there shortly. So the other thing I want to talk about just after speaking about returning the cups is that there's been another national salon results come out just over the last couple of days, and that's a new competition that the Tauranga Club have been putting forward, and that's for portraiture. So is there anybody sitting in the audience tonight who picked up an award for a portrait that they put into that? Yes, I saw your name, Anne. Well done. Anyone else? There's a couple of other names that I recognise on the list, so have a look at that. When we can, we'll show that as well, because there are some fantastic portraits in that selection that have been put forward from people all over New Zealand. So congratulations, Anne, for being part of that group. So tonight we have the results. John Hawkins, would you like to introduce the judge? Oh, you're here now. You've moved.
Just trying to organise a reader. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our ninth competition of the Open Projected Image tonight. The judge for tonight was John Reid. John Reid has got letters of APSNZ, ANPSNZ and AFIAP. I'm not quite sure what the middle one was. Haven't heard of that one before. John's given us a bit of a bio on himself. In the 1980s, John's passion for photography developed when he started working in the Westland National Park as a ranger. He was working and playing in an incredible environment, big mountains, amazing light, and photography gave him the format to capture some of these scenes forever. John now lives in Greymouth and is currently working for the Department of Conservation in Hokitika. He's a member of the Photographic Society of New Zealand and the Nature Photographic Society of New Zealand. John enjoys landscape, macro, wildlife and photojournalism. Some highlights of John's photographic career have been to photograph wildlife in Botswana in different parts of the Okavangoa Delta in 2014. This was followed up the second trip to African continent, visiting Nambia in 2016, photographing wildlife, landscape and some of the Nambian culture. John's been an accredited judge for PSNZ for a number of years and judges in open and in nature competitions. Tonight we have 38 images in the competition, of which 30 received an award, 19 accepted, 7 high acceptance, 3 honours and of course 1 in the best in show. And I'll pass it over to Joe to do the critiques. Thank you, Joe.
Okay. Oh, can you all hear me? Yep. All right, well, that was your interlude before we start. Okay. Using the silhouette of the tree to frame the light falling across the water has worked reasonably well. The toning of the image suggests that it is the light of the moon which adds some interest. In my view, I would like to see more of the channel patterns in the estuary. Maybe if the tide was out a little more, these channels would have been more visible and added more impact. The wider view to the horizon adds to the story. A wintry morning at Mount Cook. This landscape does have that cold blue feel about it, describing a wintry morning. In my view, the arrangement of the elements within the composition doesn't quite work. The fence posts, while I think they are meant to lead the eye through to Mount Cook, they have become really dominant in the composition due to the wide-angle lens used, and that is where my eye more or less stays. I suggest a foreground using more natural elements such as the river to lead the viewer into the landscape would be more effective. Roaring water. The exposure has been set for the whites in the water. I think that this has left the surrounding elements underexposed, especially in the top left where a completely black section of the composition holds the eye. Once again, I think this could have been handled differently in post-production by using the shadows slider to recover the details in the blacks and then adding contrast and vibrance to punch up the greens of the mosses and trees. Having the water exiting bottom left of the composition is a strong aspect of the composition, and the power of the water has been captured. Lichen Lace. I think the structure of the lichens are still there, and I get a sense of the abstract effect created through the ICM, but my eye didn't settle on anything in that composition. I found the dark areas at the top left to be out of context with the rest of the composition. I did get the feeling of perhaps looking upwards into the canopy of trees. However, the brighter areas leading into the centre of the composition just became a blur. Dahlia colour patterns revealed with ICM. I think the slightly diagonal lines of bright colour are the strong elements of this composition. I found that after analysing the bold splashes of colour, my eye didn't really settle on anything in particular within the composition, apart from the texture created and some darker blotches in the middle right that my eye got stuck on. I suggest that in this case, less may be more, and that if the image was cropped in a vertical line through the centre, retaining the left side of the greens and the bottom leading to the oranges and yellows top, the composition would flow better and retain the interest of the viewer. Fernbank. As a black and white image, I think the tonal range is uniform, but with little context in the darker shadow areas. My eye wandered around in this composition, not really settling on anything in particular, apart from the mass of Bicknum fern leaves. The ferns are nice and sharp, but I'm left wondering if there was a different composition, maybe less would be more. Honeymaker. I think the story has been reasonably well told with this composition. I suggest the yellow of the flower to be very dominant within the composition and perhaps distracting from the story of the bee gathering pollen. The out of focus petals that is folded back towards the bee, in my view, has become a distraction, as once seen, my eye just settles on it. The bee, while being large in the composition, I felt was just a bit soft, especially in the head area. The pollen attached to its to the legs of the bee is just visible, which adds a nice touch to the story. Okay, what do we do here? Next, let's have a look. I'm sorry about the previous one, folks. This one, Travis Valley. The track running vertically through the centre of this composition helps to lead the eye into the story being told. This is about a journey through a beech forest with the green tones making the statement. I suggest that the image is slightly overexposed, and I think just pulling the highlights back would deepen the greens and also give the image some more contrast. My eye wandered to the light area to the right, and in my view, this could be cropped out, just to the left of the large tree. A slight crop off the left side would also tighten the composition to really enhance the track leading through the middle. The green mosses, the yellowed fallen leaves, combined with the open space in the forest makes this an interesting image. Silver eye. A nice capture of the silver eye. I think the composition of the silver eye is quite strong, as the empty space on the right gives the feeling of allowing space for the subject to move into. I suggest cropping the apple off the bottom and then cloning the stalk out, as this doesn't add anything to the story being told, and in my view, it becomes a distraction. The exposure has allowed the viewer to appreciate the colour and feather detail of the subject. The eye really holds the attention. The Lady in Red, score 3. A splash of red works to draw the eye into this composition and is a strong element that conveys the story to the viewer. I think the desaturation of the surrounding buildings works well to put the emphasis on the lady cyclist. I suggest that a little more work is needed in post-production to straighten the vertical lines of the buildings, as I feel that this aspect distracts from the quality of the composition. The pavement leads the eye nicely through the image, allowing space for the cyclist to travel through. Frosty. I think the structure of this composition is sound. The section of plant material, I think, held my attention more than the icicles, possibly because of the large thorn and the 2 buds that have been placed with key positions in the image. The icicles telling the story of possibly a late frost. The exposure allows the viewer to see the detail required, while the background, being completely neutral, highlights the drama that has taken place. Trying to attract the ladies. This has been perfectly exposed for the whites and is tack sharp, allowing us to see the beautiful feather detail in the turn. The subject has been nicely placed within the composition, allowing space on the left for that mate to arrive. I suggest the blacks in the head area could have been enhanced by lifting the shadow slider in post. This would have added some more detail to the eye area. A nice and clean dark background completes the story. Early morning in the park. This looks like to be late autumn in the park. The leaves have almost disappeared from the tree that is being used to frame up and shape this composition. The light falling through the branches on the left has started to add a dreamy look to the image. In my view, the image appears to be slightly overexposed, and I suggest that some work in post could have enhanced the effect of the light falling through the scene by just pulling the exposure back and allowing the light rays to just light the areas where they're striking. The arrangement of the main elements within the composition is very strong. Quakers, not on the level. Quackers. Well seen and well composed. I think the strong diagonal line of the geese back to the person looking at their phone adds strength to the composition. In my view, the focal point of the image seems to be the foreground, and the depth of field used has left the subjects looking a bit soft, whereas I would prefer the subjects to be sharp. I think the reflections of the trees and the water adds to the composition. Kiriru feeding on te kauka berries. I think this is well composed and tells the story of the Kiriru feeding on berries. In my view, I feel that the detail is a little washed out, and I suggest that the highlights needed to be pulled back in post-production. This would add more depth to the colour detail of the main subject, as well as darkening down the brighter whites in the background on the right of the image. Nice detail in the eye and beak of the bird, and I like how the subject has been framed with the surrounding vegetation. Jet ski racer. The action, concentration and poise of the jet ski rider is all there in the image. These are the key elements that portray the story to the viewer. The exposure of the whites has been well handled. In my view, this has left the image a bit flat, and that some work in post-production could enhance the image by lifting the contrast and vibrancy, getting the colours to pop. I suggest, as this is an open image, that the orange boy in the background could have been cloned out. I say this as my eye gets drawn toward it and away from the action. I can imagine the rush as the rider powers through the turn. Pretty in pastel. The pastel tones certainly contribute strongly to the feeling that this image creates. It is soft and warm and has that dreamy feeling. The centre of the flower has been placed just slightly off centre in the composition, which is where I want to see it. I suggest that the white in the top right-hand corner could have been filled in with a colour to match the rest of the image in post, as this becomes a distraction. The water droplets add a nice extra element and complement and add to the feeling being created. Flora of Okarito River. The light dappling across this west coast forest scene adds to the overall feel of the composition. The tannin-stained river in the foreground adds to the story. I think some more work could have been done in post-production to make this scene to take this scene to the next level. In my view, while looking very natural, I think the highlights could be pulled back slightly, just to give some more definition to the foliage, as in some areas this appears to be slightly blown out. A strong aspect of the composition is the background wall of vegetation. I can see lots of different species, with the tree ferns making a nice statement. Grounding the ball. An interesting moment in the game where the tackle ball is about to be contested by the hovering blue player on the left. The feeling of anticipation is there, and one is left wondering what happens next. The image has been perfectly exposed and the detail is tack sharp, leaving the background out of focus, with not too many distractions. I suggest the composition is quite tight on the ball, and I wonder whether more context could be added with a slightly wider composition. Great ball detail. Track in a beech forest. The greens in this scene are quite vibrant, and I like the way the path leads the eye into the forest scene. In my view, the focal point seems to be on the tree on the right, and I don't think there is enough depth of field, as the large tree on the left appears to be quite soft. The lighting is fantastic, with just enough contrast to bring out the shadows. This adds the definition required. Hoarfrost Serenity. The feeling created through this composition is cold, and in that respect I think the story of the hoarfrost has been reasonably well told. The reflection adds a pleasing second dimension to the composition. In my view, the large tree on the right is very dominant, and my eye struggles to move to the left and into the more subtle foggy area of the composition. It's almost like looking at two images, and I'm left wondering if the tree on the right should have been in the composition on its own, or should the scene on the left of the tree be the composition. The stillness with the whites merging together on the left, I feel has more mood, almost as though it's been painted rather than a photograph, adding yet another very strong element overall to this composition. Pardon? Are we all good? Okay. I missed the title. Okay, the black and white element of this image is very strong, combined with the silhouettes of the people. Lets the viewer's imagination tell most of the story. I suggest that the composition could have been even stronger if the number of elements could have been reduced. I think the horizontal lines of the barrier fence, combined with the 4 people on the right, the white background minus the black shade cloth, would make a simple yet very effective composition. I say this because the post in the barrier breaks these horizontal lines and becomes a distraction. I love the outline detail in the silhouetted people. The 3 men with the outside 2 facing towards the middle, and then the slight separation of the woman on the right with her long hair slightly billowing in the wind is very strong. These are the elements that really contribute to the story of the image. Improbable, but not impossible. The intrigue of the splash in the bubble has been well captured. I'm not going to try to work it out. I certainly needed a little, the title to help me. The detail is sharp, and I think the hint of colour contributes overall to the story being told. The pinpoints of bright light are a bit distracting, and I feel that these could have been cleaned up in post. The shutter speed used is almost perfectly frozen the action at that critical moment. Silver fern frond, Kuru. The shape, colour and form of the Kuru set against an out-of-focus background gives the Kuru a dreamy feeling, which I think is very effective. The Kuru itself looks soft, which I feel adds to the effectiveness of the storytelling. It's actually perfectly in focus, perhaps the softness of the light adding the effect and the warmth. I suggest cloning out the white light spot, top right, as this does become a distraction competing with the main subject. A very simple but effective composition overall. Morning mist clearing. I think the story of the mist clearing is there. I suggest that the story within this composition has included too much of the gravel road being travelled on, as the road has almost become the dominant feature of the composition. If I draw a horizontal line above the water feature on the left and exclude everything below the line, the composition becomes very strong as the low hills become the foreground. The exposure has been very well handled, creating that moody, misty feeling to the background landscape. Aurora dancing at Cowan's Lake Tekapo. Cowan's Hill. The dancing lights of the Aurora Australis is quite spectacular. There is just enough detail in the foreground to describe the landscape. The focal length used and the shutter speed has kept the stars sharp. I suggest this composition may have more impact if a third of the sky was cropped out and the sky exposure darkened slightly in post-production. I think this would make those light beams even more vivid. There is some nice colour rendition typical of the Aurora Australis. Okay, this is a fungi. Yeah, forgive me. The larger of the fungi, or more commonly known as the spectacular rust gill, now that one I can pronounce, has been perfectly placed within this composition against the dark background. The stump from which they are growing is also dark. I think this dark area, covering nearly 3/4 of the composition, has enabled the colour of the fungi to really stand out. The green grass on the lower right corner complements the rustic yellows nicely. This is an open image, and I would suggest that it would have been okay to clone out the horizontal stick in the background, as I feel this is a distraction. The low camera position has helped capture this group of fungi really well, allowing the viewer to appreciate the detail in the fungi. Score 4, Koteri crab hunting. Very well timed as the Koteri tosses the crab. The lighting in the subject has allowed the colour and the feather detail to be clearly seen with a nice catch light in the eye. The depth of field used has allowed the main subject to be well defined, while rendering the background to an interesting but very neutral aspect of the composition. Frail. The monochrome tone of this image contributes to the feeling and the story being portrayed through the image. I think it just gives the image that old look and feel. The placement of the main subject matter, the blanket, the slipper, and the wheels, of which are probably attached to a walking frame, tell the story. The backlighting falling through the window adds another element to a room, and it also appears to be dated. Liability. I got it. The look of expectation on the dog's eyes is amazing. He or she has it nailed. Great use of shutter speed to freeze the action and perfectly exposed. I think the composition itself could be stronger, and this requires a bit of thought before shooting. If the main subject matter was more to the left, allowing the elements that make up the course to be more in view, with the dog's eyes planted on top of the left third, then the image would have been even stronger. This could have required the photographer to be lying on the ground. If the photographer can get lower than that, in animals' eyes, the impact can be even greater. My thoughts, and I still really enjoyed your photograph. Flora and Ice. I like the dreamy effect that has been created in this image. The reds and the greens are very subtle, while the detail of the petals is quite clear. My eye wandered around the frosted areas mainly getting drawn to the brighter areas, which I feel could have been toned down more in post. This is more noticeable in the top corners and around the edges of the subject. An interesting concept and another way to portray a story through photography. Snowy peaks. I enjoyed the three-dimensional aspect of this image. The appearance of the shadows and the light seen between each of the frames adds another element to the triptych. I also enjoyed the concept of low to high, as this adds to the story of the snowy mountain scene. There is a very slight imperfection in scale, perhaps between the left frame and the centre frame, as the black ridge lines don't quite line up, with the middle frame being slightly higher than the left frame. The scene itself, I feel, is very artistic, almost like a pencil drawing, portraying the cold, barren feeling of these exposed mountains. Poreha Wahine, the Mysterious Waihi. I enjoyed this image. The photographer has dared to do something different, and it has worked. The story is being told through black and white, and there is a great range of tones. And the contrast emphasising the wahine walking unassumingly past the foredune with the sea and the sky perfectly proportioned in the background. The intrigue and mystery has been added by having the main subject out of focus, but still retaining the persona of the wahine. The light falling across the face, eyes downcast, and maybe a somber look all add to the story. Las Vegas Nights. The structure and the story, school 5, sorry. The structure and the story being told through this image is really strong. The backlighting falling across the model, the pose and the red dress has created a striking foreground that leads into similar tones and the nightscape of Las Vegas. I suggest some more work could have been done in post to get the edges of the Treasure Island building set to the true vertical, as this is where my eye ends up. Otherwise, a stunning image that has that extra wow factor that fits the theme of the title. Magnolia. I think the colour rendition and the detail in this image is exquisite. The pink centre petals are nicely framed by the side and background petals. The open petals front lead the eye to the centre. The slight tilt of the flower on the diagonal adds some nice tension, and the black background works really well to really highlight the form and the colour of the flower. Gateway into the fog. The placement of the open gate and the fence posts within the composition is very effective. The space above and below the posts being almost equal gives the composition just a little bit of tension. The sharp and well-defined edges of the wooden structure adds another artistic element that is set against the high key background. The wheel tracks leading through the gate and off into the fog add to the mystique of the story. The other element, which I found was interesting, is the starkness of the environment with not a blade of grass in sight. And score 6 and best in show, thinking. A beautiful moment of contemplation, and I wonder what he is thinking about. The composition describes the essence of this person and tells us something of the life he has had. I think the colour and tone is bold. Maybe that is a hint as to the character of the subject. The smoky effect in what is a vegetated dark background adds to the mood in the story being portrayed.
Thank you. Thank you for stepping in there, Joe.
You're welcome.
Diana, would you like to join me? Okay, start with the Travis Valley by John Thornton. The next one is Silver Eye by Robin Carter. Not here. The Lady in Red by Philippa Wright. Rosti by Fritzof Mortensen. Trying to Attract the Ladies by Bevan Chillett. Early Morning in the Park by Raywin Wright. Quackers Not on the Level by Richard Cooper. Kiriru Feeding on the Koha berries, Paul Williams. Next one is Jet Ski Racer by Chris van der Berg. And then we have Pretty in Pastel by Diane Kirk. What did I say? Oh, did I? Oh dear, sorry about that. Flora of Okarita River by Joe Curtis. Put me right off now. Grounding the Ball by Les Amon. Track in the Beech Forest by Nelson Boosted. Baby and It's Cold Outside. Oh, sorry, Baby, It's Cold Outside is what's written on here, but I think some of them may have changed their name on the system. Sue Coombs. Sue here? No. Race Day by Jonathan Brown. Improbable, but not impossible. Improbable.
Improbable, but not impossible.
Jane Barnes. Silver Fern Frond, Kuru by John McCall. Morning Mist Clearing by Janine Money. Next one is Aurora Dancing at Cowan Hills Lake, Wakatipu by Han Yuan. I'm afraid I'll just have to say it's a mushroom as well. No, won't try it. Annette Preen. Kotari Crab Hunting by Nicola Jackson. Next was Frail. This is a high acceptance. Frail by Dennis Chang. And Flagility, I Got It by Tash Harris. It's amazing. Flora and Ice by Irene Ferguson. And Snowy Peaks by Diane Andrews. Congratulations. Poru Waihi, Mysterious Waihi by Francesca Davies. Las Vegas Nights by Ron Willems. Sorry, that's an honours. Another honours is Magnolia by Alan Moore. Gateway Into the Fog by Jan Bogue. And Honours and Best in Show is Thinking by Newell Grenville. Don't go away, Newell. I think Newell probably knows what this is about. This very same image was the winner of the Canon Online #4 competition And I'd like to present Newell with the award. That's all we've got tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Yeah. So at this time of the evening, we tend to bring up those people who have acquired an award, and we'll start at the top end. Newell, would you like to come up and tell us a little bit about the image you made? Well, you've got 5 minutes.
I can also use.
I'm timing.
I could use 5 minutes because there's a long story behind this, and I really thank John in many respects for it. As is well known, I'm a frequent visitor to O'Kane's Bay for Waitangi Day, and I've been going for many years. And this image was made in 2013. And what else? Yeah. So I thought about it, and I put it in the Southern Regional 2 years later. And in that particular Southern Regional, I had 12 entries, had 2 honours and 5 acceptances, and this was rejected. So I treated it like all good rejects, put it away, and totally forgot about it. And then it so happened that some of you will know that I produced the cover photograph for a publication called The Word for Today. And the editors were wanting a picture from Waitangi Day celebration. So I went back into my Waitangi Day images and stumbled across this one. And I thought, oh, that's not so bad, but it wouldn't be suitable for my cover project. But simultaneously, then a note came, and John had just taken over the Canon Online, saying, hurry up, get your Canon Online entry in. And I try most sessions to get an entry in Canon Online, and I virtually never do any success at all in it. I have a wonderful line of failures in Canon Online. So I thought, well, that old one, it's not done anything, it won't do any harm. I'll put it in the Canon Online. And lo and behold, as John has just mentioned, it came up as the top image in that Canon Online. And that had just happened when entries opened for the 9th PI. So I thought, oh, we'll put it in the 9th PI as well. So that's how that came to be. It's a very oldie but goodie. And the bad news is that during all this confusion, and my confusion is fairly obvious from my voice, I actually forgot to enter the 10th PIs. So that's the story.
Thank you, Newell. Isn't it amazing how some images can be top and then be rejected in another competition? Just depends on the judge of the day. And they saw a good one this time. So we have the next one down. Are you able to turn back to Jan? Where are you, Jan? I'll bring this over to you so you can tell us a little bit about that one.
Thank you. This was taken in the Kopu Wai conservation area, and that is on Old Man Range in central Otago. We started out in a Land Rover, and it was beautiful at the bottom, but by the time we got to the top, it was this pure fog and this absolute stunning images we got from that trip. So, yeah, this is one of my favourites.
Thanks, Jan. It's one of the judges' favourites too. What's the next one we've got there, Alice? That was Alan. Where are you? Over there.
Well, this was taken just a few weeks ago in the gardens. Used a bit of fill flash and got rid of the background in Lightroom just by darkening it off. The new masking things are working really well, and I really like it. just seemed to work. So, yeah.
Thanks, Alan. And Ron's not here. Francesca, she wasn't here tonight, is that right? Yep. Oh, Diana, you're here. Would you like to say a few words or not? You'll try.
This is one of my favourite shots of the Lindis Pass. And I have been having a special time making triptychs. And this was one of about 20.
Did this get an award at Win the Triptychs as well? Not that one. Oh, okay, thank you. It does look like a pencil drawing, doesn't it? Like you said. And Irene's not here. But Tash is. Where is she? Over here. Tell us about.
This is just a local Selwyn dog club. They had a Liability meet on, which is like agility with this ball machine at the end. So they fly down the course, and there's, I think it's timed or something, and they've got another ring on beside it. So they've got two dogs going at the same time. So yeah.
Does the dog have to catch that? Oh, and take it back. All right. So did this dog win the race? Or did the... Oh, okay. Good. Dennis, you got to tell us about this one. This really caught my eye.
Evening all. Picture of Mum, and when I was full-time carer for her, she passed away just a few weeks after the picture was taken. There was a moment of tranquility and stillness, and I felt, you know, at the time I saw the light coming in, I saw she was sitting there, quiet, contemplating, and to me it's just very serene, but also very, very frail, the picture that she presents there. And again, it seems to be my usual thing, 3 elements, you know, the shape, the blanket, and the feet. Obviously, that. There was another picture which I couldn't take. I saw it in my eye, but I didn't manage to take it. Is when Mum had her hand, which is all wrinkled and, you know, old and withered, over a picture of herself that she was looking at back maybe 50, 60 years ago. And that was a great contrast. Unfortunately, I'm not able to show you that because I didn't take it. So anyway, thanks so much for listening.
So when you see this one, you can remember that other scene. So you'll always have that other scene. And Nicola's not here. Isn't that a good timing one? And it's not. Anne is here. Anne, would you like to talk about this one? What did you do?
Any
of your settings, if you remember them?
I draw in the PSNZ workshop, Astro workshop. We stayed in Lake Tagba about 2 days, 2 nights, and the first night, the teacher said we taken the Milky Way, and the second night, and he said we go to another lake, take a Milky Way as well. But just before we went to there, he said, we change plan, we go to the hill, is tonight have Aurora. When we get there, the Aurora very, very low level, and we stay there. Then later is strong and strong. We all quite exciting. So I got this image during the workshop.
in a PSNZ workshop. Oh, good. All right, well, maybe Janine, we may make you the last person perhaps tonight. Tell us about it. And
what did I think of the comments? Okay, so I went down to Lake Camp. I was up in the Ashburton Lakes, and there was no lake camp. It was covered in mist, and so I was quite disappointed, and I headed back. And as I did, the sun was coming up further, and it was actually really pretty seeing the light. It was lovely on those wee hills and the mountains at the back. The road's not very exciting, I do accept. It just led in nicely, and it's sort of the curve of it framed the pond. I didn't feel offended by her comments. I thought they were fair enough.
because we'll all see that image differently, won't we? Yeah. Thank you very much for telling us about it. So let's leave that tonight, and thank you, all of you, for telling us a little bit about your image. It helps us to advance our own photography. So just to wrap the evening up, I'll just check here that I've said everything I need to say. The last field trip was the spring series, and the next field trip will be the last one of the spring series, and Steve Atwood is going to be taking that last group of people out to study some birds. Probably not that bird was where they're going. Now Ian Walls should have sent you, and you guys at home, you should have had an email with all the details. So if you haven't, can you get in touch with us, please? If you know you're on that field trip and you haven't got the information, let us know so we can get it to you. Now, promotions for the next dates and salons. Please get your MDC, the last one for the year, in by the end of this month. I believe the word's tranquil, am I right? Tranquil. So you can find an image to fit tranquil. And let's see, next week we don't know what we're having at 7 p.m. just yet, so we'll let you know. Diana? Oh, good. Thanks, Diana. So we do know. It's just you who doesn't know just yet. By 7 o'clock next week, we'll be in the room next door. Diana Andrews is going to lead us in a discussion of something that's passionate for her. And then we'll have the MDC Transparent AV, that's the MDC from last month. And we'll also have the competition critique for the print, number 5. So that's always a good evening where you come along and we have the prints up on the wall. For those guys who are new or just visitors, come along next time. We have the prints up on the wall and we have the critique of those prints. Is there anything else that needs to be said tonight before any information, before we wind up? Okay, so opening and closing tonight, who was that? Oh, good, thanks, Dennis. All right, thank you. We had meet and greet. I'm not sure who was there either, but there was quite a few of us having a chat. We haven't seen each other for a while, so it's a great meet and greet time just before we start. Andrew and Gordon, thanks very much for getting the lights and sound organised. Alistair on projection, thank you. And John, thank you for organising the judge and the reader. Thank you. And I'd just like to say good night, everybody, and drive.